Hello and welcome back to Redefine Parenting. I'm your host, Veenu Keller. Today, we're going to be talking about the spiritual awareness of a child. But before we dive into that, we want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and H.E.R Network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on respective app stores and iOS, Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free on Zingo TV, is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Today, I am so honored to have this beautiful guest with me. She is not only a guest, she is, my friend. She actually coaches my daughter. I have so much respect for this woman. I've actually looked up to her because she has written for Psychology Today, Oprah, so many different magazines she's published. And not only that, she and her son had created this game, which actually ended up being my kids' favorite game called Kids Quest. So I was really excited when I saw her post these things. I was like, oh my gosh, she even made a game, and I need to up my game now. Like, she's doing all this amazing things for kids. So without further ado, Ariane, let me just welcome you to Redefine Parenting. Thank you for taking time on a different continent, because you're somewhere else in Europe. And so I appreciate you being here, my friend. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Veenu. I'm so excited. I was telling my son Everest that I get to speak with you. He had lots of things to share, which I'll share later, that he thought would be interesting to the audience. And thank you for, the game Kid Quest. I'm sure we'll talk about it. I actually created it with my son during the pandemic. So anyone can create anything. That's one of my big beliefs. And children are so creative. And when you really give them permission to sort of follow that, it's amazing things come through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Everest definitely, you and your husband have done very well with him, because he's such a leader, and he's also a visionary. When I talk to him, he has so many visions of like how he wants to see things, how things should be, even at such a young age of him. So yeah, we'll definitely dive more into that. So today, Ariane and I are going to be talking about spiritually aware children. And when I was talking with Ariane about this earlier, it really touched me, because many of you who have followed my show, I had another awesome guest on, and we talked about religion in the home. And so now I thought it was only great to bring in the spirituality in the home, because if you followed that segment, I really talked about how my husband and I are more spiritual, and we've never pushed religion. We've never pushed anything except for giving our kids a foundation of knowing, hey, there's something beyond us. There's something that we are connected. You can call it energy. You can call it universe. You can call it God. And anytime you feel you need to connect with yourself, all you have to do is like take some breaths, close your eyes, and just really be. And that feeling that you feel is your connectedness to spirit. And we've always started our kids off this way. When people say, oh, we say our prayers at night, we do what we call the Ho'oponopono prayer, which is 10 words. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And we started our kids off at 2 years old saying this. They've said it every day, which to me just brings so much energy into our home at night. We call it gratitude. We talk about what we're grateful for. And that's how we say our prayers. And it's interesting, because my daughter and I've always listened to Christian rock music since they were born, because my hallucination is that the music that we hear goes into our brain and we process it, and it too is energy. And, everything, even since from the 80s, is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it's even more so now, more explicit. So when I got pregnant with the twins, I was like, you know what? I need more music that's more about gratitude, appreciation, love, spirit, and so I started listening to it, and now she listens to it. So I think there's some confusion about, am I Christian? Am I spiritual? And all that. So that's why I wanted to bring Ariane here, so she could also kind of give us some guidance, into what do we do with that? How do we support our kids in just even having that foundation?
Absolutely. And, I love this whole way to start the discussion, because spirituality can have some heavy connotations in our culture. Like, some people think spiritual people, are into yoga and crystals, and they wear white and they drink green juices, and but I mean, that's a lot of how, spiritual people sometimes are viewed. And to me, I've always thought that spirituality is about something that's much more than how you look, who you are, what your roles are, what your gender is. I think, there's a difference between your external world and your internal world. And when I practice spirituality, I talk about your internal world, which is quite unknown to a lot of kids. Most kids think there's an external world. And so to me, the first invitation with a child is to teach them that they have an inner world. And that inner world has things like intuition, which can be connected to a higher guidance, intelligence, power, whatever you want to call it. But there's a lot of answers and goodness and creativity and beauty that's inside. So for me, the first thing is teaching people that they have an inner world. Even parents don't even know that. I think a lot of parents, we tend to educate our kids above the neck. And to me, spirituality is what's below the neck. I mean, it's literally that simple. So I think it's very additive with religion. I don't think any parent would argue that you have to develop the sort of inner resources of the child in addition to externally how they show up in the world. So I'm a big believer in parenting below the neck, which is their heart, which is their soul or their spirit or whatever word feels good to people. And I've always thought that whether it's, religion, I was raised a Catholic. I have chosen to share all religions with my son because to me, I never want him to feel like he doesn't understand what a Jewish person is or a Muslim person is or an Islamic person is or who Buddha is or who Ganesh is. For me, that's part of his upbringing and his education is for him to be aware of that, not to be told what he is and what he's not. But when we were living in New York City, there were a lot of people from a lot of different cultures and religions. And I wanted him to feel like he knew a little bit about that. So even that is raising a spiritually aware child. The thing I've always said, Veenu, is, they're all doors, they're different doors into the same room. Whichever one you take, they're all kind of leading into the same room. So in some ways, I've explored so many different keys and different doors into what eventually brings me into the same room. And that room is ultimately love. It's a connection, whether it's self-love, whether it's love of others, love of nature, love of animals, love of the universe, love of a higher power.
Right. So I love that you say that because I was raised Sikh, and a lot of people don't even know that that's even a religion. They're like, what are you seeking? I'm like, well, we're seeking the word from God. I don't know. We're seeking God. I don't know. But, when I was younger, and I shared this on a previous show, when I was younger and everyone around me, I was, we are influenced. Our kids, as kids, we are influenced by our peer group. We want to fit in. We want to know that what we're doing is normal. And I already felt like I had the short end of the stick because I was the only brown person on my street. I was like one of the only brown people around in my school, so it's like, I was like learning my identity just to be who I was. And like, people didn't know Indian. They knew Mexican, they knew Black, and they knew white. But like Indian, like what's an Indian? Like, and then they would make fun of me and like, act like I was a Native American. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to be that because you're making fun of me. And so there's a lot of confusion. And now we throw in religion. Almost everyone around me was all about the Bible and Jesus. And, during the summer, my mom would work and me and my brother were like the latchkey kids. And I remember specifically this day, like everyone's going to vacation Bible school. And I was like, well, there's no one to play with in the morning. Everyone's gone until like 1 o'clock. I want to go. And my neighbor would take like all the kids that wanted to go because that's how they were. Like everyone has to know Jesus and that's our job to teach you. So I snuck and I went because my mom said I was not allowed to go. So I was like, well, she's at work. I'm going to go anyway. So I went and I remember, oh, you got to take Jesus in your heart. So I'm like, okay, well, if that's true, I accept Jesus because if there's not afterlife, I'm saved. I'll go to heaven. So I'm just like, making sure I'm covered on all grounds at this point. I was already raised that there is afterlife, And so then I come home and my mom came home. She's fully depleted, working jobs and going to law school. And I'm like, Mom, you have to accept Jesus in your heart or you're going to go to hell. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, you don't understand. And I'm crying. I'm like, you have to go to afterlife with me. You have to go to heaven with me. Please, please. All you have to do is put your hand on your heart and say, I accept you, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. She beat the tar out of me. because she was like so upset. Number one, I lied to her.
Yeah.
And she was more, I don't know if she was upset or hurt that I would go and learn about a different religion without even exploring what my base religion is, if you would, like what my family was raised in. And, she's newly into America. I think she had only been in America maybe not 8 years at that point. And so she just knew like the religions that she grew up in. I mean, she knew Catholicism because she went to a Catholic boarding school, but my grandparents were adamant about her learning the Sikh religion. So there was a lot of conflict for me.
Yeah.
So when I raised my two boys, which I call like my first time, this is my redo with the twins, I didn't really talk about God. I didn't talk about religion. I talked to God every day. I preached what I felt was God. I felt like God had pulled me through the lifestyle I lived after being suicidal for so long. I made it to the other side because of God, and I just called it God. The more I started to age, it's like the more I get pulled into the spiritual realm.
Mm.
And when I had the twins later in life, and my husband's very spiritual, and it's funny because he drinks green juice and he has all the crystals, and he likes to wear like airy clothes. He's definitely hippie-ish, but that was before I think he even discovered he was spiritual. That was the hippie side of it.
Mm.
But when you're saying that, I'm like, well, she's really describing my husband right now. And when we had twins, I said, now that I have really figured out that I am spiritual, I'm not religious.
Mhm.
And you definitely identify as spiritual. There's not a religious bone in your body. What do we want to do? How do we want to bring up these beautiful souls that God decided we're going to have? And he's like, well, we just have to make them aware. We have to make them aware that there's something inner and outer, and we're going to do the best that we can on how to do this.
Yeah.
And so now, because of the influence, I think my daughter, questions like, am I Christian? Because she has a teacher that she loves, that she does Bible study with. And I remember her asking me literally last week, she says, Mom, why was Jesus the messenger? So here's my non-Christian answer to her. I said, well, people need to see in order to believe. Like people really want to see on the outside. They want to see proof. So God is everywhere. God is in everything, every living thing, every moment, everything. Like you can reach out and you're touching God. And most of all, he's within you. And people really couldn't understand that. So God says, okay, I'm going to come in human form and I'm going to speak the truth through human form so people can understand that there is a God. And Sage being Sage, and you know her well, she says, well, then why was he the son of God? And I'm like, okay, now we're going into a whole Bible study and I'm going to do the best that I can right now. And I said, well, we're all children of God.
Mm.
And it's just, he came as the flesh and that's how people saw him.
Mm.
And so again, I hear what you're saying. I want my kids to know every religion. Like we go to my mom's, I take them to our temple called Gurdwara. They're learning our religion. And then here she gets to have the influence of the Bible and talking about Jesus. And, we talk about Judaism, like when Jewish holidays come up, we talk about it because what you are saying, that to me makes someone spiritually aware, is being aware of other people's belief and being respectful that there's all different ways to reach the same thing. And your way's not wrong and my way's not wrong. What's right for us?
Yeah.
So with that, because we have that commonality, how do parents, like for our listeners who are like, she's right, I didn't even realize that existed in me. How do we start that? How do we start to help our kids understand it's first here before it's outside of them? Because kids are really external people.
They are. And, I would say that I sometimes get asked, how do you teach spirituality to kids? And I always say the same thing. You don't teach it. You remind them. There's nothing to teach. Kids are inherently spiritual. If you've ever been around a newborn, they are connected to a source of love, which is why everyone lights up around babies.
Yeah.
So I think our role as parents is to keep that connection alive before the world tells them the goal of life is to have things, be things, win things, compete in things, get A's, go to college, get married. Because the
All
world, the consensus consciousness is going to tell our children that what matters are all these external goals. And I think as parents, we need to keep reminding our children that their internal, sort of more invisible connection is actually where they're going to feel sort of their safety, their love, their container. So that's one thing. One is you don't teach it, they just are that. Now here's the thing. You as a parent, right? You need to be connected to that because your kids are glued into you and your connection. So whatever it takes, I always say to parents who, are not doing the spiritual things, that joy and spirituality are interchangeable words. So when you are connected to a source of joy, you are being spiritual, whether it's for yourself or people you work with or your children. So there's nothing to go do and be spiritual that you haven't done before. It does mean it's a high standard because a lot of the parents I work with and coach are not connected to joy. They're connected to guilt, self-punishment, self-criticism, not good enough, I'm a bad mom, I'm sacrificing, I'm putting my life on hold. So that's their source of connection. And so I always say, all the research, Veenu, shows that the most important thing for a kid to be happy is for each parent to be happy. Together, not together, Christian, Sikh, Buddhist, doesn't matter. Now that's a big ask on parents because it's actually much harder for you as a parent to be happy than for you to parent your child or read them the Bible or the Quran, right? So my invitation to parents is always to check in with how the parent is doing, because when the parent raises their own level of consciousness or vibration or connected to joy or whatever we want to call it, that's when the kids go, oh, that's what happiness is. That's what it looks like. Wow, mom's happy, or dad's doing what dad loves, which means that I can then do that too. Do you see?
Right.
So
we're the role model, right? We're the role model.
Absolutely. So, the starting point is, where am I? Where's my connection? Not what do I believe? What am I connected to? What emotions are running through me all the time? Is self-love running through me? If it's running through me, I'm going to be able to exhibit that for my child. If, self-forgiveness, big one, letting yourself off the hook, allowing your own humanity. I say to my son all the time, I make mistakes. I'm still learning. It's sort of, it's part of sort of the discussion. So he gets to make mistakes. He gets to not be perfect.
Right.
So the first is what's going on with you as a parent. It's not what do I as a parent need to do or teach or be different with my child. One of the things that I always say to my son, but I say it to myself all the time is, you're loved, you're safe, you're guided, you're connected to something greater, you're a child of the light. Those phrases, right? What are we always saying to them? They start bathing in those phrases. They start believing that that's who they really are. So that's sort of the reflection that you're currently giving them. So
I love that. And I love the fact first, and I always tell parents, it starts with us.
It does.
Like when I got into the whole parenting realm and people say, well, how did you get into this? And like, what was your why? Well, first of all, my why is to give kids a childhood they don't have to heal from. And if we're going to do that, the foundation starts with the parenting. And you're exactly right. Are we checking in with ourselves first? Like, we want everything for our kids. We want our kids to be better than us. We want our kids to be more spiritual than us. Like, everything we want more in our kids than what's in us. But then there's a presupposition that it's not enough in us, right? And so it's that self-reflection, from what I'm hearing you say, is like, check with you. And you're right. Like, where do we get our connection? I get my connection from my work. I get my connection from the email I sent, from the post I made, or from the call I had. And when am I really taking time? And when are they seeing me? When are they seeing me take time to check in with myself, notice myself? And it's interesting that you said that, because So I do a lot of my self-reflection in the morning. It's part of my morning routine. And my kids know that when I'm in the bathroom, that's my time. And so today I was like, blow dry my hair and my eyes were closed because it was in that moment. And my daughter was talking to me and all of a sudden she looked at me, she goes, and I can hear her consciously, but I was like somewhere else. And she goes, "Oh, I am so sorry. I forgot. You're doing you." Right. Like, so she's like becoming aware because my eyes were closed, and she knows that I was not so much trying to ignore her, although I kind of was. It was letting her realize that in that moment, find your time. Like, find your time. When's your connection? And I'm all about having my connection because I like to start my day off that way. If I start my day connected, I stay connected. That's a hallucination. It's interesting. There's two things I want to touch on. One real quick is, when you say that they're bathing in those words, I love that. I love that. And the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was there was that experiment that people did with water and rice. It was a water, and I think you know what I'm talking about. And there was three containers of water and rice. One, they spent, a few minutes just saying every awful thing they could to it. The other one got ignored, and the other one just got full praise. And they did it, I don't even know, I'm going to make this up right now, 30 days. And what they noticed is the experiment where they were like saying rude, horrible things, letting down and bullying and everything in that container, it had mold and it was just disgusting. The one that got ignored also started to get bad, but wasn't as bad. But the one that they spoke beautiful words into, like, you're the light, you're beautiful, you belong here, it flourished. There was like no mold. There was nothing in it. It was crazy. And it's like, so people can look this up on YouTube to actually see this because this is a true experiment. And it really just resonated with me when you said that. Like, what are we bathing in? Like, how are we allowing our kids to be that pure water in our world in that moment? Or are we neglecting them so they could start to get mold? Or are we really banishing them with our words so they shrivel up and become nothing?
Yeah. I tell my son, and I tell kids all the time, that your body and your cells are listening to what you're saying all the time. And so I see it with my son. He'll go into saying something that's not very kind about himself, and then he'll be like, cancel.
Oh, I love it.
He cancels the effect because he gets that it's going to affect his immune system. It's going to affect if he grows big and strong. It's going to affect, what's going on sort of internally with his organs. So I've taught him in some ways the connection between the energy of his words and what he feels about himself. And I tell you, there are few things that I think make up a really spiritual adult, spiritual child, spiritual human. Self-kindness is probably the container of it all. And I think as parents, we're all obsessed with raising kind children. Be kind to the waiter, be kind to the taxi driver, be kind to your grandparents, be kind to your siblings. I'm obsessed with raising a kid who's kind to themselves, because when they're kind to themselves, they will be kind to others.
Right? Absolutely.
They will be kind to others. And parents, we are not kind to ourselves.
Nope.
We are the epitome of not kind to ourselves. And so they hear it. They hear how we comment on ourselves, our looks, what we're wearing, what we did, what we didn't do. So self-kindness is the beginning in some ways. It's like the container of all containers. And that's easier than self-love. I feel self-love is kind of hard to grab, but wow, how kind am I being? Am I creating that within my home? Do I let myself off the hook? Do I forgive myself quickly? Do I let myself have a bad day? Do you see, it's like, that's where it starts. So it's not, yes, it can be angels and crystals and guides, and all of that stuff is welcome. To me, it's not excluding anything. It's not going, this is included and this is excluded. Spirituality is probably the most open, enveloping, everything's welcome. Even anger is spiritual.
Right.
Grief is spiritual. Do you see? It's all the emotions are welcome. And so these kids feel very relaxed, where everything's allowed in some ways.
Right. So this is so beautiful. And so for our listeners out there, I think that Ariane just gave us a great strategy while she was saying this, is that, you know, my question in the beginning is like, how do we teach this? She's like, not teaching, it's just being, it's not, it's reminding. And so if you have kids that are trying to understand and grasp this, what if you just taught them that their body is a container? What do they want to fill it up with, right? And I always think of the love bank. Like, I've been teaching my kids this, and I will say I'm not the best at doing it every day. And you just reminded me, and I'm going to figure out how I can remind myself even more about filling up their love bank, right? Because how many withdrawals do we take every day in that love bank, you know? And so the more we can fill it up, the more we can, you know, again, get away from that guilt. I mean, I make mistakes on a daily basis. I say things that as soon as it comes out, I'm like, how do I bring it back in? And I can't. And so if I would make more deposits than I do withdrawals, I feel like my kids' container would stay pretty full. And it's also teaching them that if we see it in them, what do they see in themselves? You know, and I tell people, especially in our generation, Ariane, we were taught like to self-beat. It was almost like this underlining thing that you have to be bad in order to be good. You got to see what's bad so you could fix it and be good. And I was just talking to a client the other day, you know, and she's 12 years old. And I was telling her, I'm like, you don't have to get to bad in order to see the good. What if you are already good and you could just make it even better? It's called the enhancement of it versus the change, right? We're always looking, how do I get it better? How do I get it better? What if we just enhanced it? What if there was nothing to get better? It's kind of like turning on a light and making it brighter, you know? I also wanted to bring light because you have a 3-book series, you know, and I know they're books that really bring to light the whole, and it's called Giggles and Joy. And you know, I've asked Ariane to put in the comments on the YouTube the link, because I would recommend you guys getting it. She was a bestseller on Amazon for this series. It's specifically written for kids. And when you said, you know, joy is synonymous with, you know, the spirit, you know, so is that the underlining theme of that book? Is that what the joy book is all about? Can you just help us understand a little bit about the series?
Yeah, so, you know, I wrote them when Everest was 2 because I had what I felt was quite a spiritual life before I had him. And I wanted to I had no sort of guide or instruction or manual for exactly what we're talking about. And I started looking, and there were beautiful religious books, many of which I bought because, as you know, I wanted him to understand the stories of all the religions. But I wanted to sort of give him these life skills that I certainly as a child was not given. That's a whole other conversation in terms of how I was brought up. And so I was like, well, if I don't find it, let me go create it. And so while I was, you know, parenting this child, I started seeing themes that I wanted to teach him. So intuition was one of them. And, you know, most parents have never mentioned the word intuition to their children. I wanted to help him feel safe in the world. How do you create safety for a child? I wanted him to have a different concept of being honest and telling the truth, not from a discipline, but from I choose this. And it's also good for my body when I tell the truth. Same thing with, you know, forgiveness, letting things go, having a bad day, being sad, being sick, you know, the concept of home. What is home? Is it an external thing or internal? I put all these themes together. And by the end of it, I had like 24. I was like, that's too much for one book. So I put them in 3 different books. So the first is Giggles and Joy. The second is You Are Loved. And the third is Being You. So each of them has 8 life lessons in them. They're all illustrated. Their age, I'd say probably 3 to 10. I find the 10-year-olds often read them to their younger siblings if they have them.
I love it. I love it.
But they're all around these themes. So one of them is called Bye Bye Bad Day, and it helps kids have a bad day. What it really does is it helps parents have a bad day, because I cannot tell you the amount of times I gave one of the books to Everest and I let him choose. I go, which one do you want? Which is amazing because they will choose the one that either you need or they need. So now you have access to their inner world. You know that they've had a bad day. Or there's another one called Being Sad and Being Mad. And it gives kids permission to be sad and mad, and also how to be with that emotion and how to move through it. So the amount of times he has picked the one that I needed, and I'm kind of like, you know, hiding my tears while I'm reading Bye Bye Bad Day. But it's very healing,
Right.
for him to see it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to mom to have a bad day. They're not going to shut me off if I'm being grumpy. We don't give permission to our children to do that. So
Right.
the books are these separate themes. One is about Mother Earth and like honoring Mother Earth. There is one about God, and it's got every possible name of God that we've ever heard of or
I
come
love
through
it.
in a circle, and the kids get to know what they are. So it was a gift to myself and my own child. And then it's sort of, people are looking for ways to just keep this alive,
Right.
not, make it in some ways different or not different. So yeah, it's been a journey of me understanding it for myself as a parent. Like, I'm not done. I'm not fully baked. I'm, I'd say one of the biggest gifts I can give my child is my own level of awareness and consciousness. So I created these books really to sort of help parents who truly are doing the best and who really want to share these life skills. It's just we don't know how to. A lot of us, have never had them shared. We've never been taught
Right.
them.
Right.
I was raised to be perfect.
Yeah.
I was raised to be perfect, and I was raised to feel lots of things were wrong with me, and I had to fit in. That was a big one, right? One of the things I asked Everest, over dinner, I said, so what do you think I've done well to raise you as a spiritual child? And his answer was, you let me be completely myself, and you don't tell me the way I need to be.
Oh,
Okay, so that I mean, it warmed my heart, because I do feel as parents, it's like a little bit more like this, do this, dress like this, eat like this, study like this. And it's fine. We need to help them move into this world. But that's very different when the child feels that they can't fully express and be themselves, because a spiritual child is a fully expressed child.
yes, they are. Yes,
Not
they are.
following family loyalties, not doing what you think they should do in sports as a career. A fully expressed child is a child who is on fire and connected to their own essence, not yours.
So I'm curious. So where's the boundary? So let's just use my daughter as an example, right? Because she's a great example. And you coach her. So I think this is even great because I
Or
think that this will help. And this is one of the things we're working on. So, and it's her clothes.
okay.
So, I agree with you. I agree, full expression. She's now at the point where she asks me, does this match? Which is nice because that shows me her cognitive, like, okay, I want to match now, because she's moved out of like, well, I like the polka dots and I like the stripes and I like them, so I'm going to wear them. So we've moved out of that stage. And by the way, I would let her wear that. Probably not out to a formal dinner or anything, but I would let her wear that when she wanted to. And then we've now moved into the messy stage where it's she stains her clothes because she's an artist, so she's not cognitive of her cleansiness around her paints and her slimes and her Play-Dohs. And so it kind of gets everywhere.
Yeah.
It kind of gets everywhere. And it stains her clothes. Like, it's not washing out their stuff. And I'm trying to appreciate her mall of the world where she just picks them up and puts them on. And I want her to wear what she wants. At the same time, I feel as a parent, it's my job to guide her in taking, I don't know if there's even the right word, pride in what she looks like. And, like, let the outside reflect what you feel on the inside. That's what I used to say to her. And she's like, well, I kind of feel comfortable today. And I'm like, well, does comfortable mean stained clothes and wrinkled clothes? And she's like, I mean, comfortable means that it fits comfortably and I feel good in it.
Yeah.
And I really, really, like, I let her go in wrinkled
I
clothes today.
love her.
I let her go in wrinkled clothes today. And here's what it comes down to, and I'm sure listeners can really hone in on this. What's the first thought I had when I saw her in wrinkled clothes? Was, what are people going to think about me?
That's right.
I'm allowing my daughter to go to school in wrinkled clothes. Are they thinking that there's no discipline? Are they thinking that I don't know how to raise her? Oh my gosh, you're the parent-child whisperer. Like, you can't even control what your daughter's wearing. Like that. And I'm just being very vulnerable and honest because I know that the listeners it's going to support someone out there with what I'm saying, because yes, I coach many kids, and yes, I get so much value in the coaching for my families. And yes, I'm a mom first. I'm not a coach, right? When my daughter asks me, why is Miss Ariane coaching me when you're a coach? Because I'm your mom and I can't coach you. I don't see these blind spots. And you and I keep butting heads because I'm, you know, like putting on you what I want you to do, because I want you to, number one, have standards. Number two, be aware of what you're wearing. And that is true. That is totally true. And yet I do know that my daughter is a fire. She's a fire child, like in her element. And she's very expressive. She's an artist. And no, she does not look at the stains on her clothes. No, she does not care if it's wrinkled. That's not what she's going to. So we have conflict. So I know there's listeners out there, and I'm only asking this because, you know, you've helped me with other things with her, but I want this strategy because I know parents are facing that. And that's one of the things you said is let them wear, like, that's part of being spiritually aware, is that you get to be who you want to be without the judgment. So I'm going to turn it over to you so you can give us some coaching here.
Yeah. Thank you for being so honest. So I've dealt with similar issues, not to do with clothes, but just like, oh my God, what are other people going to think? You know, I'm also a coach. I'm also, you know, present in the world. And when I have let that go in me, you know, like my son, it's snowing. My son will go out without a jacket, without socks, in shorts. He thinks, and I kind of go, that's crazy. Now, here's what I hear, Veenu. I hear my mother's voice. So I don't hear my voice. I hear my mother's voice. Of course, you shouldn't be in those clothes. Of course, what are people going to say? You know, Everest has really long hair now, and he doesn't like brushing it. He looks sometimes like a homeless kid. He does. He's got hair all over the place. Sometimes he looks like a surfer. Sometimes he looks like a homeless kid. But I hear my mother's voice more than my own. And so at that point, when I hear my mother's voice, I go, okay, I have a choice here. I have a choice to be loyal to the generational lineage, which is, this is how kids should dress. This is how they should eat. This is what time they should go to sleep. I have her voice sometimes there. This is, you know, how they should be disciplined. So I have a choice at that point to go, that really works for me. My choice, I'll keep it going. Or I have a choice to go, actually, you know what? It's really not that important. If Everest wants to go to school in shorts when it's snowing, it's his choice. So there's choice is a big element here. One is I get to choose. Is this something that's so important that I'm going to pass it down to the next generation? Because I didn't have a choice when it was being fed to me.
Right.
The first thing is choice. The second thing is really to go, I don't think people are thinking that much about you. They're thinking about how bad they are as a parent, how bad they are as a mom. I honestly don't think people are thinking, you know, wow, Everest has long hair and he's in shorts. So it's kind of disconnecting from this perception that the world is constantly judging us, because the biggest judge is you. So it's your self-judgment that's potentially showing up in the looks or the mouths of others. When you drop your own self-judgment, it doesn't really show up anymore.
Right.
The self-judgment's a big one. I would say practically, if I had to really be action-orientated with Sage, I would say you need to have an area in her room, which is not only her artist's area, but her artist clothes. And her artist clothes are when she was doing art. And so that she gets that there's a distinction between, I can fully be an artist. These are artist clothes. Just to be practical about it, as opposed to, I have one set of clothes and I do everything with them. So I'm all about being practical, you know.
So what about these kids that you see that, like, what do you see about these kids that are all put together? Like, I see these girls, they have the big bows in their hair. Their clothes are so nice. They're iron. And it's like, they're dressed to the nines, like every day. Right. And again, what's our compared to what? Right. And so then I see my daughter, and it's funny because there's a video that I have of Sage when she's like 2 or 3 years old. And we were driving around in Idaho where my mom is. And you're right, it is my mom's voice I hear. And this video I love because she's singing to herself in my rear view mirror on the car and the windows down. And she's like, and I don't know why my mom cares. I'm a ragamuffin. I like being a ragamuffin. And she's singing at like 3 years old. And today, she still doesn't understand why she can't look like a ragamuffin. Like, she does not care about it. Why do I care about it, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head when you say, whose voice is it? You know, whose judgment am I really under? And it's not even self, it's my mom. Like, I'm here, and don't get me wrong, I love my mom, and it's lineal, right? It's like the lineage from the generation that's sitting on my shoulder going, really? That's not how I raised you.
Yeah.
How could you let your daughter go out like that?
Yeah.
How are you letting your son have long hair? And, you know, why aren't you making your son brush it? It's like, I mean, you know, because he doesn't want to. Like, that's his hair and that's the style and that's what he feels good in.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So it's that happy medium.
Yeah. I want to add two things. One is, just because I've seen it in myself, this stuff is not permanent.
Right.
I used to dress a certain way. I don't anymore. I used to have a certain hairstyle. I don't anymore. I used to eat horrible things. I don't anymore. So I am 100% convinced that none of this stuff is very permanent. And because I know that kids are always changing and they're always growing and they're always learning, when they see that coming through, they know that that will ultimately change. I mean, Everest has been threatening to shave his head, you know, with whatever blade. I don't even know what the blade numbers are. And it's like, that's coming. Even though I like him with long hair, that's coming. Mm-hmm. So one, I would say it's not permanent, you know, and I'd say the other thing too is when you're really looking at your child, it's whether even when we were pregnant, we had ideas about how the child was going to be. We had those all need to go.
Yeah.
Those all need to go. I don't even know if my son is going to go to college. I honestly, Veenu, because I was educated with all the best things, MBA here, best institution, whatever. It's sort of, was it good? I mean, I'm happy that I did it. I don't even know if I can put the expectation on my child that he will go to college. So even that I've had to let go of.
Absolutely.
Because that's my projection and my hope and my desire for him. And I do not know what, you know, the universe's plan is for my child. And that's where I need to step out and go, I'm going to love him. I'm going to guide him. And I'm going to give him whatever he needs. So here's the other thing about clothes, because we've had that too. When we are invited somewhere, when we go to someone's house, when someone has made an effort for us, we make an effort for them.
I love
that. So there was a dinner the other night. He saw me get dressed. He saw my husband get dressed. And I was like, Everest, all I need is for you to make an effort. He came with a collared shirt. He wore jeans. It was fine. So whatever an effort looks like, it's a respect thing.
Right, right.
That he got.
I love that because I will tell you, when I had my two boys, I thought that was it. And my son turns 29 tomorrow and my other one's 24. I gave up on having a girl, right? Like, I was never going to have a girl, whatever. And then I met my amazing husband who brought two beautiful girls into my life at 3 and 6. And they were girly girls. So when we got them on every other weekend, I got to do their hair and stuff. So I kind of got that out of my system a little bit. And then I found out I was pregnant with twins. And then I found out I was having a girl. And a part of me was like, oh my gosh, I get my girl. I get my girl. I'm so excited. And the other part of me is like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a girl. Like, boys are so much easier. I'm a boy mom. I'm definitely a boy mom. And I've had experience now for a couple of years with my stepdaughters. And I'm thinking, am I really ready for this? You know, and I only had them every other weekend. Like, I didn't even have them full time. And then Sage was born and I'm like, okay, I got all these bows for her hair. Okay, she barely had any hair. But I remember this specifically. We got them out of the NICU after a week and a half being there. And I bring them home and they're probably like 10 days, 11 days old. And I have them on this blanket laying down on the ground while I'm doing some dishes. And I had this beautiful little bow in her hair and a little bald head. And I was looking at her doing dishes. I'm like, yes, I got my girl. I get to do her hair and all these bows and beautiful, cute clothes. I come back around and the bow is off her head. And I'm like, you don't even move. Like, how did you get this off? And I
Wow.
put it back on her head. And I'm like, no, sweetie, we're going to keep it on. You look pretty. So I start filling her up, right? You look pretty. That's so cute. 5 minutes later, she has it off again. And my husband looks at me and he says, I wouldn't have much expectations of these bows in her hair. She's like 10 or 11, like 11 days old, and she doesn't like them. And I'm like, you're ridiculous. Like, she's 11 days old. She doesn't even know what she likes. To this day, she will leave the house with a bow and it will come home and not. And I will tell her, she's like, Mom, can you please curl my hair? I love how your hair is. Can you curl it? And I said, Sage, I'm not going to take the time in the morning to wake up early to curl your hair because you're just going to take it out. Like, you're going to do, like, take out the bows. You're going to take it. No. I promise I won't. I don't even know why I make her promise, because all I'm doing is teaching her to lie, because I know she's going to take it out. Like, because she'll, put it up. Da, da, da. The minute we're done with cheerleading on Saturday in the car, we can't even get home before she's pulling the bow out of her hair.
Yeah.
And I think I gave up on that, right? I gave up on, this is how I want my daughter to be. And then I see all these girls at her school, at dance, beautiful curled bows, and she goes, oh, I love their hair. And I'm like, you want me to do it? She goes, I mean, no, it looks good on them and I like it, but not for me. And I've accepted that. So I think my block, which I've learned from you, is it's really not about if she's wearing wrinkled clothes. I mean, if that's what she's going to do, then that's her. Like, she's going to figure out, if people don't like that, how she reflects on that. Is that going to change her? Is it not? Does she not really care? You know, I will say this, and you know this, my daughter has a lot of self-worth internally, that she really honestly doesn't care a lot what others think. And I almost feel at this time, and that's why, again, we got her a coach, because I can't see my blind spots, right? I see your blind spots with your son, but I can't see my own.
Of course.
And that's why I tell everybody out there, like, get your kids a coach, because if you want to be the best of the best, you have got to be open to see the blind spots, you know? And we have a lot of them.
Absolutely. And, you know, the thing I would say for parents, because I think we all need to sort of hear this over and over, is for us to recognize all the things we're already doing right. You know, and to teach your child to keep recognizing. I mean, we have some spiritual type habits that we've done as a family. So we do listen to much more spiritual type music sometimes, because it just calms the nervous system and the emotions of all of us, including the dog, right? We do say grace as a family. We say thank yous. We pray for things that are happening, whether it's an earthquake in Turkey or something difficult that's going on in the world, so that there's a connection moment as a family. You know, I do say quote unquote prayers with my son at night, but I ask him. I don't direct them. He's in charge. Who do you want to pray for? What do you want to pray for? I don't impose it. I don't say any religious prayers. I ask him. He's in charge. He wants to pray for himself, his granny, the dog, the world, poverty, homeless people, whatever he wants. So I put him in charge of his connection, which is very different, because parents think they've got to be in charge of telling them. Kids know what to pray for. And praying is not a difficult word. You know, praying is thinking about and considering other people other than just yourself.
Right.
And
It's outside of you.
Spirituality is, how am I connected to more than just myself and my world? It's not a me thing. It's sort of what I'm connected to something greater, and the same energy goes through me, you, Sage, it's all the same energy, right? So the other part of spirituality I want to mention is, how do you teach kids to be connected to more than just themselves? What can you do for others?
Right. I love this. This has been so great. And I know you and I can go off on another tangent. And, you know, the other thing I just wanted to thank you for real quick, because I don't know if I've ever told you the depth of this. So Ariane and her son Everest made a game called Kids Quest. And I saw this, and I always said, ask a better question, get a better answers. Questions give us curiosity. Questions give us an opportunity to learn more about things. And so when I saw some of the questions that, the samples, I was like, oh, I got to get this game. So I got this game for my kids last year when it came out. I think it was last year it came out, or during COVID. Yes, that's it. Kids Quest. And for those of you listening on my podcast, it's Kids Quest. It's a little box card game you can get on Amazon. It is my kids' favorite game. You know what they love about it? They want to skip the questions. They want to give me all the questions because they want to know. And I didn't realize how curious my kids were about my childhood and about how I grew up. And they want to hear stories. And that's what I love about these questions. It'll ask you questions about your childhood and things like that. And, just different things. And I love the quality of questions they ask because they're curious questions. I want to know more about you. And it made me think, like, how much do we allow our kids to really know us? They see us as this dictator and, I'm going to tell you how it is and this is how it's going to be. And yet this game, like I said, it's my kid's favorite game because I think it allows that connection to see mom, not just as you're the parent telling me what to do, but gosh, there's a part of you, mom, that you're actually human. Like you went through this.
Yeah, but we're equal, right? You're a soul, I'm a soul. There's no superiority, there's no expert inferior. And it's really a game where kids get to understand the grown-ups in their life, just in a fun, beautiful way. So yeah, thank you for that. And
so, yeah, I would highly recommend it. I'm sorry?
Everest created it. That's the amazing thing.
I love it. And that's what I think is so great is that, again, your son has this way of looking at like what's needed, right? Like you have done such a great job spiritually connecting him because, again, it's outside of him. It's not inside of him all the time. And he definitely knows that distinction. So it's been really great. So thank you again. And again, she'll leave a link for all these on my YouTube under the comments, but definitely get that game. Like I'm telling you guys, it's a great family game to have. So if you are finding value in this conversation here on our show, please join our Redefine Parenting group on Facebook for even more tips and conversation. Do someone you know a favor and share my group with them as well, so they too can hear what they need to in order for them to feel supported in their parenting journey. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.